Staring at Desh's face was like looking at a bleached skull with eyeballs. His skin was so tightly pulled across his skull, every bump, every ridge, every indent of bone was laid out in sharp relief. White hair had started to grow on his scalp, which was riddled with holes, and his emerald green eyes were sunken far back in their sockets. When she had finished screaming, all she could do was continue staring at this terrifying visage. The crazy-haired girl's voice broke the spell. "Aw, come on, girlie, can't be that bad. I once had a boyfriend who was a red mist addict, and he looked even worse than this asshole near the end. Am I really that horrifying?" Valentine considered her next words carefully, as she didn't want to piss off Dash, who looked like the violent type. Well, it's not that you're horrifying, it's just that I didn't expect it, that's all." Valentine cringed. There was no way he would fall for a weak excuse like that. "Oh, I understand." Valentine did a double take. He actually fell for it? Is he dense or something? The crazy-haired woman spoke up abruptly. "Okay, moving on. I can't write very well. Time to decide on the sleeping arrangements. Valley and I will take the bed. D-Man, you get the floor." "My body doesn't require sleep. I'll keep watch all night. There are still resistance fighters out there." The woman snorted and said, "Oh, my shining knight in armor. But wait, where's your weapon? You can't defend your fair maiden without a sword." Dash stared blankly at the woman, as if he was annoyed by her sarcasm, he hit it like a pro, or he didn't have emotions at all. After a few moments he said, "I'd hardly call you fair, White. As for weapons, I still have the pistol you shot me with, plus the extra clips you had in your pockets, not to mention the C8 explosives, det cord, flashbangs, smoke grenades, and frag grenades you had in your backpack that we left behind." White sat there with her mouth open. "So that's where you went for 45 minutes. I thought you'd just up and abandoned me and the girl." "Don't be foolish," Dash replied. "I wouldn't abandon the person I need to protect." "Who, me?" White said incredulously. "No, I'm talking about Brooke." Dash pointed to Valentine, who was listening very intently to this conversation. She was curious about one thing, though. "Why do you need to protect me?" Dash turned to face her. Valentine winced at the sight of his face. He then said, "I need to protect you because you may have critical information pertaining to the Resistance's mission objectives. As much as I just want to walk away from this whole thing, I feel it necessary to keep you out of the enemy's hands." Valentine was taken aback, not to mention a little insulted. She replied angrily, "So, what you're trying to say is that if I weren't a prime target of the Resistance, you would have left me behind? Is that it?" The boy took a moment to consider her words and said, "Yes." As soon as the word passed his lips, Dash knew it wasn't true. He knew that if he tried to tell the truth now, it would sound odd. In reality, Dash didn't know why he wanted to bring Brooke along. It just felt right, somehow. Every time she spoke, he held on to every word. Her voice to him was the most comforting sound he'd heard so far. Up till now, the extent of his auditory input had been his and others' screams, gunfire, and the voice of that bothersome, incessant white woman. Whenever he looked at Brooke, he felt a strange warmth in the pit of his stomach. It was pleasant, but unpleasant at the same time. He longed to inquire about this feeling, but he was certain the question would be met with hostility. For all he knew, Brooke was just as condescending and verbally caustic as White was. He had no way of knowing. So he decided to figure things out on his own. Suddenly, White spoke up. "Hey, do you hear that?" Dash listened intently. His genetically enhanced hearing detected voices, probably at the far end of the motel hallway. There was arguing and laughing, punctuated by the sound of doors being kicked in. What were they searching for, Dash thought. Their boisterous attitude and bickering ruled out the possibility of them being in any organized military force. "I'd say either looters or gangbangers if you ask me," White said matter-of-factly. "Either way, they don't sound friendly," Valentine said. Dash agreed with both of them, but didn't speak. Instead, he slid a clip into White's handgun and clicked the safety to the off position. Valentine saw what he was doing and said, You don't plan on taking on all of them, do you? There might be dozens of them out there. You'll get turned into Swiss cheese in these cramped quarters if they have guns. Yeah, right. This asshole is friggin' bulletproof, Amy scoffed. What if they shoot him in the head? Valentine countered. Dash spoke up. Well, I guess I won't give them that chance then. Brooke, hide under the bed. Don't come out until I give the okay. Got it? Valentine nodded once, then slipped out of sight under the bed. Hey, what about me? I'm still tied up here in case you forgot. Amy rattled her chair a little as if to remind Desh of her presence. Desh walked over to her and unceremoniously stuffed some surgical gauze in her mouth. A steady string of muffled words followed this action, none of which sounded at all kind. The sounds of crashing and the discordant clatter of conversation grew closer, and Desh, with one last look at the now gagged Amy, turned and hid in the closet. Being shot in the knee she could tolerate. After all, he treated the wound afterwards. Tying her up she could understand, but this was way over the line. Gagging her and leaving her tied up and exposed to possible rapists? No. That asshole was not getting off with just a slap on the wrist this time. He was gonna get it good. While Amy was running through the list of all possible things she was going to do to Desh when she got out of this mess, the front door exploded inward and 6 of the absolute ugliest looking people she had ever laid eyes on appeared in the doorway. They all had piercings covering their faces, and their hairstyles, ranging from colorful mohawks to cue ball shaved, did nothing to detract from the fact that they were all ugly as sin. The biggest, and if possible ugliest of the bunch, spotted Amy, and his piggy little eyes lit up. Whoo boy, looky here, gents. Christmas has come early. Check out these trussed-up turkeys some kind feller left us. A skinny thug to his immediate right cackled and said, My, little lady, do you look scrumptious. I'd like to just chow down right now. But you know what, guys? Before we take a bite, there's something we gotta do first. The rest of the thugs looked at him quizzically. He gestured, and they all took a semicircle position around Amy, who was feeling more objectified than scared. The skinny one took up a position behind Amy. She heard a snick and felt the cool touch of metal on her throat. He leaned in and whispered in her ear. His breath smelled like roadkill. We gotta carve the turkey first before enjoying it, of course. If you're gonna do something, asshole, you better do it now, Amy thought. As if on cue, a gunshot rang out, and Amy suddenly felt what she sincerely hoped wasn't brain matter spray the nape of her neck and the whole back of her head. The closet door crashed open, and 5 more gunshots rang out in a single second. Amy watched as the rest of the gangbangers seemed to drop all at once, each with a bullet hole in the perfect center of their foreheads. She watched as Desh policed the gangbangers' weapons and piled them on the bed. He then ushered a shaking Valentine from under the bed. Amy wondered who that girl was more afraid of at the moment, the gangbangers or Desh. Amy was certainly feeling scared of her captor. The inhuman speed at which he fired the pistol was enough to unnerve anyone. If he could fire an automatic pistol faster than a machine gun with deadly accuracy, what else was he capable of? Desh looked at the dead gangbangers, and then at the weapons they were carrying. An M824 combat shotgun, a .357 machine pistol with state-of-the-art recoil dampener, a mini Gauss pistol, and various melee weapons. The thugs were wearing carbon nanofiber body armor, ill-fitting at that. Desh could only draw one conclusion. The gangbangers stole this weaponry and armor from dead soldiers, drones most likely, as most of those weapons could shatter the wielder's wrists when fired because of the massive recoil, unless the wielder had ultra-dense bones. Desh wasted no time stripping the armor off of the thugs. He laid out the 3 flak vests on the bed. It was just his luck that 2 of them were configured for female drones and 1 for male. He began to unzip his coveralls when both of the girls noticed what he was doing and turned their heads away. Geez, tell us ahead of time when you're going to start stripping, or better yet, take it in the other room, will ya? Nobody wants to see you in the buff. Amy's sudden outburst made Desh pause momentarily, but then he dismissed it and continued to take off his coveralls, revealing the jet black carbon nanofiber bodysuit beneath. Amy and Valentine both breathed a sigh of relief, which puzzled him to no end. What were they expecting, he wondered, as he began to don his leg armor. I assume those other 2 vests are for us? Amy asked. Dash finished strapping the armor to his legs and said, "Your assumption is correct, White. If we're going back out into the open, I want you both to have a good chance of surviving a firefight. This also means, of course, that I expect you to be armed." Amy's eyebrows arched in surprise. "Are you saying that you are going to give me a gun?" Dash looked at Amy quizzically. "Yes, of course. Even though you are a prisoner, don't expect me to protect you. You must do that yourself. I believe the phrase is, 'I'm not gonna babysit you.'" "Okay," continued Amy. "How do you know I won't shoot you in the back the first chance I get?" Suddenly, Amy was looking down the barrel of her own pistol. "Do you plan on doing that, White?" Dash said in a cold, emotionless, yet frightfully deadly tone. Amy, to her credit, showed only a moment's surprise before she said coolly, "No, just a hypothetical. I ain't gonna shoot you in the back." Valentine, who was silently observing up till this point, lost her temper and started shouting, "What the hell is wrong with you two? First you save her life, then you point a gun in her face. Isn't she your friend?" Amy and Dash both looked at Valentine incredulously, then looked at each other, then back at Valentine. Amy burst out laughing, and Valentine thought she saw the corner of Dash's mouth twitch upward. "You stupid girl! If he was my friend, do you think he'd tie me up like this after shooting out my fucking kneecap? I don't think so. This pale bastard killed my entire team. Who'd want to be friends with him anyways?" Amy continued laughing until she was out of breath. Dash returned to strapping pieces of armor to his body, saying nothing more on the subject. Valentine slumped against the wall, feeling slightly confused. Dash finished suiting up, now looking like the drone he was. It was then he realized that he felt more comfortable, more secure wearing the armor than when he wasn't. He felt like himself. He realized that without his armor, he felt like a nobody. Drones lived and died in their armor. They were never supposed to remove it. It was part of who they were, and without it, Dash felt empty. It was a mistake to have ditched his armor in the first place. He knew that now. The only problem now was the absence of a helmet. He still felt vulnerable without it, and he was uncomfortable with the prolonged stares that Valentine gave him to his naked face. He longed to be enveloped in it, in the solitude of a battle helmet, the faceplate separating him from the rest of the world, safe from prying eyes. He promised himself that his first priority would be to find a deceased drone and confiscate their helmet. White's voice snapped him back to reality. "Hey, asshole, how about untying me here? Oh, and some more pain pills while you're at it." "Right, of course," Dash muttered, as he picked up a 12-inch serrated combat knife and deftly cut the ties that bound Amy's wrists. Amy massaged her wrists, which were now raw where the plastic had dug into her skin. "That's better." She sighed and accepted a pain pill Dash offered her from the first aid kit. She swallowed it and said, "Okay, give me my pistol back. It's about time we were reunited." Dash shook his head and instead reached over and grabbed the shotgun and a combat knife from the pile of stolen weapons on the bed and handed them to her. "You get the shotgun. You know how to use it better than Brooke. She gets the pistol." "Why can't I use one of these?" Dash turned to see Valentine holding the Gauss pistol in her tiny hands, pantomiming firing it, accompanied by appropriate sound effects. "No!" Dash shouted and dashed over to her and snatched the deadly weapon out of her hands. Valentine looked dumbly at her now empty hands, still processing the speed at which Dash had disarmed her. She did a double take and then said angrily, "What the hell is the matter with you? Why can't I have that one?" Instead of speaking, Dash flicked the safety off of the Gauss pistol and, without taking his eyes off Valentine, pointed the gun at the wall behind him and fired. The gun went off with an audible thump, and the force of the recoil sent a shockwave up his arm, rattling his teeth in his skull. Meanwhile, the wall exploded, sending wood splinters and drywall shrapnel everywhere. But the carnage didn't stop there. The 3-pound slug had not only penetrated the wall, but kept going through 8 motel rooms, leaving fist-sized entry and exit wounds in the walls. Dash holstered the weapon on his leg holster and said, "That's why. Do you wish to debate this matter further?" Both girls stood, their jaws slack, mouths open in shock. Valentine pulled herself together and managed to shake her head in reply. "Good. Brooke, do you know how to use a 9mm pistol?" He held out White's pistol, butt first, to Valentine. She accepted the weapon, checked the magazine, drew the slide back, clearing the chamber, checked the safety, and flipped the weapon and deftly caught it, ready to fire. My mother is an army general. I know a few things about conventional weapons. Dash marveled at this girl's ignorance. How could she know so much about handheld weaponry, yet not know a thing about a simple Gauss pistol? Then he realized something. Valentine was a civilian. Gauss pistols and rifles are known only to those who can effectively wield them. Drones. Which she obviously wasn't. Dash heard the cocking of a gun behind him, and turned to find White loading the final shells into the shotgun he had given her. She caught his eye, and stood up, pumped a shell into the chamber in her weapon, and said, "We gonna go or what? I assume you have a plan?" Well, folks, that is the first part of this book that I am writing. I haven't found a title for it yet, but it's there. It's there. So I might continue reading if I write any more. So I hope you enjoy that. I'm Frag Penguin. Goodbye.